Well, good morning. In game, we're back here on Farming Sim 17 with Lone Oak Farms. I fast forwarded the time. It appears we have some rain coming, which is common in early spring, although it says we're in mid-spring. Sometimes in the area here, we'll get a fair amount of rain right up to summer. Right now at the time of recording, it's towards the middle of June. I think it's June 15th at the moment. And we've had a lot of rainfall this year in June. And it all depends on the year. Some years, we'll have temperatures even in the 90s. I'm talking Fahrenheit, even in May. And past few summers, Junes have been relatively free of rain. And this particular summer go around, there's been a lot of rain, and I know some of the kids are grousing about it as if it's not a natural thing, but I remember times growing up where it was that way, and there was a lot of times on Lone Oak as we were trying to get a hay crop in, which we always try to do before the harvest, that we sometimes had trouble doing it because there wasn't enough drying time in between the rain showers. But whatever it may be, we're here on the map again, and it's 7:03 in the morning. Let's go to our fertilizer spreader. And I believe last time, didn't we put him on a course play? Looks like we still have it too. So we're gonna let me see, I gotta remember how to do all this again. This is field 45. So we get to the started right here. We'll do a single headland once around. We'll create our course, and we'll get Johnny here on his way. And there should, oh, actually, you know what? What kind of a course did it give me? Yeah, look at that. We're gonna see how this goes. It, yeah, when you got a strange shaped field, you never know exactly what course play is gonna do with it. But we'll see. We'll say here to go to the first, and we're on spray mode, so let's see what he does. Off and working. Just looking around. Once again, I love hearing those birds. Thank you, Kim G, for all those extra sounds to put in the map. Looks like we're kind of starting off with a fair morning, a little bit of clouds. And I think this is a new sky. The last video I mentioned the sky mod that we're using. It swaps out the skies at midnight, so we always have something new to look at in terms of the weather or what we see up in the sky. Just like we would in real life. Never the same sky twice. So we got some rain coming, and we got him throwing down some fertilizer. I think this is going to be the second coat, so we'll need to put one more on before we call her good. Let me just hop in here real quick while he does that. I believe we are... There we go. Yep, there's our second coat. And no, I guess we must be okay with our tractor. We're not compacting anything, so that's good. We'll need to put another coat over here on these fields. You'll notice here on the grass that it says it's ready to harvest. I do have the grass selected here. I could take it off. We could go out there and cut it and bale it for hay. And that's the same that you could do in real life. You could cut any of these grass fields and lay them down and turn them into hay. And obviously you wouldn't want to wait clear until they're ready to, pop out seed heads to make hay out of it. But even though it says it's ready to harvest, we're not going to harvest it at this moment. I don't know, maybe it'll turn orange. I don't know that it gets really orange like this over here. We'll let it ripen just a little bit, get a little bit fuller. We're going to cut it for grass seed harvest, so we're going to be windrowing it at some point. So we'll save it for that. But we especially don't want to windrow it when there's a rainstorm kind of on the way, because the seasons mod starts to deteriorate the windrows when it rains on them, which is a pretty cool effect. And more can be said about this maybe when we start windrow, but that actually is pretty true to life. You know, when you windrow the field and then you get a bunch of rain on it, depending on how warm it is when the rainfall happens, you could get what's called sprouting in the windrows. Literally, the seed that you're hoping to harvest instead sprouts right in the windrow, thereby ruining itself, and you're no longer able to harvest it. So it's not a good idea to have a lot of rain on windrows once you lay them down, so you kind of got to keep an eye on the weather. If it's a cold rain, sometimes it'll go a little bit longer, but you don't dare, or what you hope doesn't happen is that it germinates. That's what you try to avoid. So it appears our hero spreading the fertilizer is doing a decent job. We're going to have to fertilize all three of these fields, so we'll be uh, we'll be going on this for a little bit. So maybe I'll put this back over on fertilizer so we can kind of gauge the progress. It's always going to miss a few bits, but that's just the way it is. So we'll send him off on that. And I don't know, is it just me or is it darkening up in here? There's like a 20-minute time period whenever it starts to rain, and it could be it's just trying to get morning started. It's kind of a lackadaisical sunrise, if you will. But there's always a 20-minute period before the rain would appear in game, so it could be where during that time I can kind of call it the rain fade period. The tables that I've studied for the game, but I can't tell if we're there yet or not, or if it's just still naturally a little bit dark. Just an amazing mod those fellas made, the season's mod. Here's getting covered. So I want to go back to the barnyard, and you know what? This is fine. I can just come in here. Last video, we kind of explored the barn over in here. I showed you some real life pictures of it. There's maybe more that could be said about it at some point in the future, but I want to talk about this building over here. And I know I did a little bit, kind of an initial map tour, looking over this, maybe it was in the first video or what have you, showing this building here, and I'll show some real life pictures. I mean, they did an excellent job showing all this. Now, inside of the building, it's quite a bit different, but outside, this is pretty good. All the way down to the vertical tin work that was on this particular building, the smoke chimney up there, even the light looking over the barnyard is similar to what's there in real life. Man alive, all the way down to the conduit up the pole. That's pretty good. I think I've opened it up in here. Well, they kind of have it cordoned off over here. In real life, if you came in this door, you would see a wall in here in the middle, kind of right about the edge of this here. They got a wall in there now. You can go around the edge, and then back here there'd be a door. There's a stairwell going upstairs. There's another door about right over in here that goes into here. Let me just open this door. I think it opens, or maybe it doesn't. Open sesame. Yoo-hoo. Yeah, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the only way to get in is over here. So let me turn the lights on. Well, at least I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Lights. There we go. Now the lights are on. They must have been on already. But anyway, there was a door through the wall, kind of over on that far wall there, that would come over into this room here. And what this is a meat cutting room. I have spent many, many hours in here, and I think it's just yeah, you can't even see through the windows. It's just inaccessible. This is there's some cooling equipment that's in here. There's a cooler in there to hang a side of beef or two, and then a big old table in there. I'll show you a picture here in just a moment. But evidently, this particular door does not work. Nope, looks like it's built right into the model solid. So let me hop out to see a picture. We can kind of go through a couple of them. Actually, let me back up. Yeah, this is in the barnyard. Like if I go back in game here, this is kind of at this angle here. Kind of looking over here. And I think I've explained in real life, this slurry pit that's over here doesn't exist in real life. These buildings are pretty accurate, but there's actually another building sitting right about here that has some solar panels on it, and they put a good deal of firewood in it. We'll see a picture of that here shortly. And then it's kind of just open space in here. So I think for purposes of the game, it needs to have a place for slurry because it assumes you're going to use this barn as for your milk cows. There's a manure pile kind of over there. In real life, the manure pile is kind of over here behind the building, but in real life here, this is more open than this appears. Kind of, sort of. All depends on what kind of equipment they got stacked kind of in the area. So let's go back to the picture. This is kind of at that angle. Here's that building I was talking about. There, the solar panels kind of sitting up there. Um, that's kind of a whole topic in its own right. The add of renewable energy. The government in this area, well, I guess the whole U.S., offers certain tax credits and assistance to purchase renewable energy projects, one of which was this, and try to help because these would never be sustainable on their own. So the government helps fund them, if you will. That's a whole big topic I don't need to get into. But you'll see details too, like there is a tank over here, there's barrels, there's various paraphernalia around a barnyard, just like any farm would have. This truck here probably hasn't moved in a very long time. I remember it being used when I was on the farm. It belonged to one of my uncles. It was kind of his primary means of transportation. I can still hear it in my mind, but I don't think it's been moved for a while. Matter of fact, I don't think it even has tires on it. It looks like it's sitting up on blocks. So, yeah, it's probably gone by now. I don't remember when I took these pictures. Maybe he kept it for sentimental value. Maybe not. Yeah, I see so many memories look at this. When I was a kid, I mean, at one point there was a garden that they had in here. There was a grassy area. The field I say field, the lot kind of sloped off. They've built this up over time by hauling some rock in here, making it a little flatter. But it used to be kind of just slope off. There was briar patches out here. I remember at one point we wanted a place to kind of do our business, so we dug a deep hole over here and we put in an outhouse. I see that's gone. Uh, so, anyways, yeah, things change over time. And boy, even as I look at this building, I think of another memory. But I'll leave off on that one for now. It involves my grandpa. But I said I was going to look at this building over here. So now this is right inside the front door here. So if you're coming in this door right here into the shop, this is what you would see inside. Whoops. Oh my goodness. Look at that. It just dumped my pictures all again. I don't know why I did that. I'm sorry. Now I gotta go find where I was again. Well, here's like one of them that shows that in there, but I don't think this goes inside. I wonder if it's further up here. Was it from... Give me just a second here. This is outside the building. Here we go. This must be temperamental windows or something. Maybe I'll just look at my icon, make sure. I don't know. Hopefully he's spreading fertilizer still. He should be a good chap on course play. So this is just inside the door, and you see this rustic old workbench. Well, back in the day, I mean, there was tools. This used to be where they stored all their end wrenches and stuff up here. We use this all the time, at least to store stuff in. And then over to the right, there was a welding table and whatnot. But oh, the story I can tell here is on my own father and some of his brothers. I don't know if my uncles did this. This is an old workbench, and I was told, hopefully no kids are listening to this. They would take 22 shells alive, and they would put them into this workbench at the top. There's various holes, and then they would beat on it with a hammer until the shell went off. Not the smartest thing to do, but that's kind of what I think of when I see this workbench. Who knows what my grandpa thought of all that? Hope maybe what he didn't know didn't hurt him. Here's the door into the meat cutting room that I kind of mentioned there, that isn't in the model that they used in the game. But there it is. This is now the door. See, I said there was a wall kind of across there. If I go back in game briefly, if I go in the room here, just to kind of look around. And again, I have no idea if this is of any interest at all. Any other farm in the country could tell the same types of stories I'm telling to you all right now. I'm just sharing my experiences in this particular place. It was turned into a map. So we'd be looking at this angle kind of right here. There's a map, a wall, excuse me, there in real life. So if we, and once again, when you look at that, it just totally dumped my picture. Maybe I'm getting low on memory or something. Maybe I'll stay in here and I won't go back in game or horse around with that. Well, years ago, I mean, this is where we did welding, fixing equipment, changing the oil, all kinds of stuff here. Usually with the door wide open because the building here wasn't big enough to hold the machinery in there. Well, now you can see it's kind of cluttered with various things that they're storing. These look like some legs to one of those bucket elevators. So some conveyance of seed is in here. There's an old spray tank, it appears. So just kind of some things. And there, through this door on the other side, there's another small room. There's a stairwell that goes up here. I don't know that I took any pictures up there. They used to have bolt bins and things like that up there. Oh yeah, there they are. You can kind of see them up there. They would store things in there. There's an old chimney in here. They had a furnace in here for a while. Maybe that's what this is. I'm not sure. They had a wood burning furnace in here too for a while. But yeah, it doesn't look like they have that in here anymore. It was a big old cylinder shaped thing. So spent a lot of time in here, but honestly, I don't think it gets used much anymore. This is kind of now on the other side of the wall. That stairwell I'm talking. There's a door to the outside over here. Um, just not much going on in here anymore. Here's a picture of the meat cutting room. Just on the other side of the wall, you can barely see the edge of the door there. It is the cooler. I think that's a light to go in there. Here's a table we've many times have used this room, cutting up a hog or beef. There's even a cheat sheet kind of on the wall. I wonder, does it say what's in there? Can't hardly read it, but I guess it's the basics. Who knows who made that sign? It's been there for years. But under the table, I mean, there's a meat grinder. Over to the side, there's a mixer. Just part of the things you do as a family working together, whether it's on the farm or whatnot. This room has definitely been used many, many times over the years. Cutting up meat, making sausage, and so forth. I think I had a couple pictures. This now is back outside of the building. I think everybody recognizes this. These partitions in the building came, a number of years after I worked on the farm. Back when I worked there, it was all open. And they now have a fuel depot, I think, in here. Maybe they're able to lock that off. There's occasionally there's people that come steal fuel at places like this, if it isn't totally secured. Another picture of that truck out there, the barnyard. Maybe what I can do right here is share the memory that I have of this shed. When you'll notice there's a seam right here in the tin work. As their machinery has grown in size, they've needed more space in the barns to park it. This used to be a shed where they would park their combines over the winter. That's where they stored them. Well, it was extremely tight. You can even see the outline of the edge. And this at this point, I mean, it had been a couple decades back when this work was done, and I was here when it was done. So when when I was on the farm, they decided to peel the edge of the building off along this whole side, and they extended the roof line a little bit further to get more space. Now the combines are tall enough, they couldn't fit all the way in, but with the pickup header on the front, you could nudge them forward just a little bit further. You could close the door behind them and keep them a little more preserved out of the weather. So we were working on this. We peeled off the old tin and stripped all this down to, I don't think it's studs. I think it's basically a pole building, or it was at the time. Well, in the process of pulling the old sheeting off, or maybe it was putting it on. You know what? Yeah, we weren't pulling any sheeting off because I think we were extending the size of the building. So it wouldn't have been pulling it off. I'm mistaken on that. It would have been putting it on. So we had a truck backed up kind of right along here. And I was on one end. I think I was on this end. There was another, one of my cousins or somebody on the far end, and we were lifting these sheets of tin, and we were then pushing it up here onto the roof where we'd already built the framework and everything, so we were going to put them up there and then go nail them down. Well, as we were standing here, my grandfather came driving down in his truck. It would have been somewhere in here, and he got out, and he was barking some orders at us, and I haven't a clue what he was saying, because something and that happened totally changed everything. He While he was talking, like I say, I was standing up here on the truck or whatever it was where we had all this roofing that we were putting up there. Well, a gust of wind came up and just tore the sheet right out of my hands. Now, would have torn it out of someone else's hands, but what it did, it's like you couldn't even do this if you tried. My grandfather was, oh, excuse me, I had a cough. My grandfather was standing right here. He had a hand out. He was gesturing or something. Well, the sheet of tin came down and just landed smack on the top of his hand. And it just, I mean, he started bleeding immediately. It just whacked him hard. And, I think back of, it's kind of like I mentioned in the previous video, there are a lot of things that can go wrong on a farm where accidents can happen, people get hurt, you get injured. Well, this was one of those times when, maybe I just wasn't holding on tight enough. I wasn't paying enough attention. Maybe it would have happened anyway with a wind gust, because I mean, we all know stuff happens. I mean, there's just all sorts of what ifs. I could sit there and say, well, if he hadn't come down and distracted us, it wouldn't have flown out of my hands. Well, the reality is stuff just happens in life, and this was one of those days that stuff happened. It just beat the daylight out of his hand. Well, immediately he's bleeding. He covered his hand with something. I can't remember if he took his shirt off, got down to his undershirt, and put it over his hand. He went up to the house. Um, I have no idea what happened up there. He came down eventually with Grandma a few minutes later. I felt like about a half an inch tall. I felt just awful, that I had hurt my grandfather that way. And I was pretty glum, I think, for about a week and a half after that. So they come back down in their truck where we were there, and he hollers out the window. This whole time he didn't even hardly indicate like how much pain he was. It must have hurt like something fierce, but he never indicated. Grandpa was a man's man, and I know he must have been in a lot of pain, but he never let it show. So he told me that Grandma was going to take him to town because Grandma looked at his hand, and how did he put it? He said she thinks she can see some tendons swimming around in there. I think that's kind of how he put it. So we then had to finish a job of getting the tin up there while they zipped off to town. Well, he came back eventually, and his hand was all bandaged up and taken care of. But I've thought back on that, and yeah, maybe I could have held on better in all that. But if it had to hit him anywhere, I'm just so thankful it hit him where it did. The wind could have taken, and anybody that's worked with metal sheeting of any kind, whether it's on a roof or on siding, you know how sharp that stuff can be. And what if that would have hit him in the head or sliced him along his neck? It's just like my mind is just over the years has gone many other different ways. If it had to hit him, maybe it's fortunate that it hit him on the top of his hand of all places, not his palm, so it didn't wreck the feeling in his hands. I think he had scars there the rest of the time I knew him from where that hit him. But I just, even thinking about it now, it kind of conjures up those old memories of, just how bad I felt hurting someone else. It's bad enough when you hurt your own self, by screwing something up. But when you screw up and hurt someone else while you just stand there and you're not hurting, it, well, it makes you feel kind of like trash. So, but something I will say this for my grandfather. There was times he chewed me out because I deserved it, I needed it. He never said anything to my recollection about this at all. Nothing, not a single word. And which kind of surprised me at the time. I was kind of bracing for something to come of it, but he never said anything. And maybe he just realized that, stuff like this happens, and goodness knows it wasn't the first time he'd ever been injured in his life. But I I remember this spot. I remember what was going on there, and it's kind of sobering to think through some of the what ifs that could have happened. And I'm just thankful they didn't. This now is looking back south. The barn would be off to the right. This is a shed that's there now. Obviously, they got a lawnmower in there. But they also have, I wanted to show these trailers here. Grandpa had passed away long before these pictures were taken, but these were some of the things he worked on in later years. He had a real fondness for animals, for horses, having grown up and working with them. I think a lot of the older men, maybe not so much anymore. I think that generation is kind of on its way out. But those that grew up in the era of depending upon animals for uh, for their livelihood, in the farm work, really had a fondness for him. And so, uh, maybe just like today's farmers look back on the first combine they had or some old machinery. Well, Grandpa was old enough. He looked back on the horse farming era, and so he always had a few wagons around and what have you. So just thought I would show a few of those if there's any interest. I'm gonna head back in game. Oh, look at that. Our hero has finished the fertilizer spreading. Who knows how long he's been done. We're gonna take him out of here. Gonna go along the edge of the field and head on out. Oops. Look at that. I can't even put on cruise control. Wrong speed. Well, I'm assuming, let me see, I don't know if he'll keep going. Oh yeah, he covered the field. That looks good enough. Good enough for government work, they say. I'm going to take him up here to another field, and, I'm looking at the clock here. I can't believe how quick time goes in here as I reminisce and think over some of these things. Oops, we must be on the autosave. Apologies for the jitter in the screen. But we still haven't had rain, so we know it's coming. I must not have my little mod in here that tells me, gives me the time as to when the rain is going to fall. Maybe I'll have to put that in here. We'll get him going on the next field over. And hopefully he has enough. What, maybe halfway done and 45. Yeah, it's probably similar to field 44. So let's just set up a course over here. What do we have? Oops. Always got to remember how to do this. 44. Set up the course real quick. And Actually, I'm going to save it there. So I think... Why is my... There we go. I'm going to save the course there, and I see we're at half an hour. Thank you so much for stopping by to listen to this episode. I do hope I'm not boring anybody and sharing my memories and pictures of this particular area of the planet. Um, I hope you're enjoying this and seeing kind of the real life area around Lone Oak Farms and kind of what makes it up. So thank you for taking time to watch, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now.